We're rolling.
Hi, Moore Middle School. Welcome to your Personalized Learning Design Day. We're starting with this video to walk you through what's going to be happening this morning while you're doing some personalized learning time on your own. So let's get started. First of all, we've chosen for you today learner pathways as your core focus area, primarily because we know some of the work that you've already been doing, and we thought this would push you to go a little further.
And that was one of the one of the areas you identified.
Correct.
So this personalized pathway about personalized pathways was designed with you in mind by me, Maddie Shepard.
And me, Joe McKim. So our agenda, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time going through this right now. What I will point out is that you'll notice there are times here you want to decide a person in your group who will be your timekeeper and keep you on task. Since you are working at your own pace with some flexibility, it's important that you're monitoring your time and making sure you move forward with the work. And we'll go through each of these components now, starting with the personalized learning rubric check-in. We want you to think about where your team is with the core component of learner pathways. So let's start by looking at two phases of the learner pathway continuum. The first path deals with varied learning experiences, and the second deals with differentiating learning objectives. We know that you've been experimenting with learner playlists and giving students different varied learning experiences, but we think you can push that further, and we want you to look at that continuum, varied learning experiences, as individuals as well as a team, and say, where am I on this continuum right now with my current work, and how might I move that forward? Same with the differentiated learning objectives. You may or may not have been working on different learning objectives for students or groups of students. You may still be doing one objective just with different learning experiences to get there. So we wanted you to see the next step in your progress. So take some time with this slide and decide where you think you are.
On the next slide, we're going to dive a little bit more deeply into varied learning experiences, but keep in mind, after we look at the rubric, wherever we feel like we are, let's keep the next step in our periphery, whether that's parts of the varied learning experience continuum or going over into phase 2 around differentiated learning objectives, so we keep pushing ourselves as we're designing today.
Right, so you may want to set a goal for yourself for where you want to see yourself the next time we do this. So let's zoom in to phase 1 of varied learning experiences. What we've done is given you at the bottom, in those bottom two boxes, some look-fors for what it would look like in your classroom if you're beginning or developing or practicing and achieving on the other side. So again, spend some time looking at these, talking about them with your team. Was your self-assessment of your individual classroom and of your team accurate? And if not, why? Or if so, why? How did you get where you are? And again, we're not going to dig in with the next level, but keep in mind those differentiated learning targets as the next step if you've mastered the achieving phase of varied learning experiences. Next on our agenda is the inspiration phase of the day. This is where you will access and engage with new information and explore some things to get you thinking about where you might go. We've given you 6 opportunities to dig in with some material and get inspired for your next steps. We won't go through all of these in detail, but we wanted to point out that the first 2 are from your Touchstone text. The first from How to Personalize Learning. We're asking you to dig into Chapter 2 and think about what the implications are for that for your work. And the second is from Chapter 5 of Personalizing Learning in the Middle Grades. And again, pages 153 to 159, I can talk, are all about building flexible pathways. They even give you some vignettes of students who have experienced that. So what can you glean from that to help improve your practice?
Next, we've got promoting personalized learning through pathways. And in this piece of inspiration, we've got examples from middle schools, samples of what this could look like on paper and in action, as well as some videos around making sure your pathways are transparent, so kids are knowledgeable of where they're going, what the expectations are, and how they might continue to improve their agency in learning through these pathways.
Next, we're giving you a strategy to include more variation in learning experiences as well as how students demonstrate learning with Genius Hour or passion projects. Genius Hour and passion projects mean the same thing, so whichever one you want to call it is totally fine. Some schools don't call it either of those, they come up with another name. It's still the same idea that we're giving students some ownership of time to learn how they want to. We've given you an overview video that's really short to just what it is. Our introductory slide deck on Genius Hour. Slide 5 really gives you a tight-knit structure that you can use to start planning for a Genius Hour project in your classroom, but it also is very flexible, so you can modify that to the amount of time or however you want it to look. It's just a resource to get you started. We've also given you some other resources and templates as well as some videos of student passion projects, some from the Brown School and one from outside JCPS at Parkland Middle School.
Next, we've got Share Your Learning, which is an awesome website and treasure trove of resources when we're talking about demonstrations of learning. So first, we've got a presentation rubric for when students are sharing their learning, some look-fors and some ways to scaffold them up to competency in that area. We've got some examples of middle school student-led conferences. In number 2, we have an introduction overview slide deck that's very comprehensive, includes a lot of resources, templates, tips for getting started. We have another video on presentations of learning, and then just a link to the website itself with all of the toolkits and resources that you might find helpful.
Next, we've given you some resources around learning playlists. And again, you guys have already started somewhat with learning playlists, but we want you to think where you could go next with them. In our Touchstone Text Personalized Learning in the middle grades, there are some examples in another vignette. We've also given you a case list from a middle school outside of the district, Valor, and some other sample playlists that you can view in Google Docs. We've also given you some resources to think about in designing playlists. Building Playlist 101 is an infographic that takes you through what should be in a playlist. And then we've also given you a video on designing playlists using varied data resources. And they're using a particular piece of technology, but as you look at these resources, think about how you might use that with the resources we have available like Google. We've also given you some blogs and things to read as well. So there's a lot on this slide deck that might help you get further than where you already are with learning playlists.
After we finish the inspiration phase, we'll go into the choice and application phase, where we hope your timekeeper will allow it for everyone to spend the brunt of their time in applying the applications. We've got some options as to how you might apply your learning from the day.
Yes, so we're only asking you to choose one application task to complete. We've given you some options. Again, this is your time, so we're not trying to control it in any way. The options we came up with was first to design a proposal to launch student-led conferences at your school or at your grade level or in your, even if it's just your class. What would that look like? And think about an implementation plan. What would your timeline be? What kinds of things would you need to do so that when you make that proposal, you have all the answers to the questions that might come up.
Next, we've got kind of building on what we know you guys have already kind of tried. So this next task asks you to design a learning sequence that includes variation in the way that learners practice new skills or concepts and the way that learners demonstrate learning of these new skills and concepts. Putting both of these pieces together allows for flexibility in how and when learners practice as well as demonstrate competency.
All right, the next option is to plan and implement a Genius Hour in your classroom. What would that look like? And make sure when you're doing that to be thinking about who would an authentic audience be? How can you make sure you're planning for that authenticity throughout the project so students are getting feedback from people outside the classroom as well as with that demonstration of learning or assessment at the end.
The last option for application today is to design a learning playlist for an upcoming unit. And again, keep in mind, the playlist itself is not fully personalized learning, but the content within the playlist, as well as the flexibility that learners have to move through the playlist at their own pace and demonstrate learning how and when they choose, is where the playlist really becomes a tool for personalization.
Next, we move into individual learning time. This is where you can choose to split up if you want to, and each of you go to a different session. We have one on community partners, one on project-based learning, and one on empowering others to jump in. Or you can all go together if you like. It's totally up to you. And then we'll break for lunch. Enjoy this opportunity to get outside the building and have lunch, because we don't get to do that very often. After lunch, we're going to come back together for more team time.
So during this time, we'll kind of synthesize our learning from the morning in the team inspiration and application time, as well as the individual learning time where you may have gone to different sessions or not. But this period is for you to discuss with your team how all these pieces might fit together in your implementation plan. Next, we're going to talk about one of our deliverables today, and that is the WHOOP. All right, little jam for you there. The WHOOP consists of 4 parts. First is the wish. What's a wish for something you want to complete that's challenging but practical? The next is an outcome. What outcomes are we hoping for? The second O, obstacles. What obstacles might we face, and how might we preemptively expect so we can pre-correct those things? And then finally, the P stands for plan. What's our action plan for bringing our learning from today to life in our classrooms for our kids?
Right, and the very last portion of our day is going to be team share out, and we're going to ask you to share your learning from today, whether that is having typed into this slide and shared the slide with us, or do something on chart paper, do an interpretive dance, write your own song to the tune of Whoop, There It Is, whatever works for you. The next step is share out. During our team share outs, we're going to ask you to give feedback to other teams, and we're going to ask others to give feedback to you. So put everything you want out there so you can get the best feedback possible. And make sure you have somebody taking notes. And that pretty much is going to end our day for our personalized learning design day. So now it's time for you all to get to work. Remember that we're here if you need anything. Whoop, there it is.